You are listening to Ideas and Leaders podcast. I'm Elena Paweta, Executive Communication Coach and TEDx organizer. With each episode, I'll share with you communication tips and ideas from top business leaders to help you excel in your career. Hello, welcome everyone. We are having next episode of Ideas and Leaders podcast here. And today my guest is Tony Child. He is founder and owner of Elevated Worldwide. He's focusing on improving how executives and business owners see and think about life to create success on purpose. Hi, Tony. It's great to have you on Ideas and Leaders.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. It's my privilege to be here.
So, Tony, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, about your story? How did you start doing what you do? You're doing such exciting things. You're mentor to executives, to high-performing entrepreneurs, Olympic athletes. Wow, so many amazing achievements. So how did you get there where you are right now?
Yeah, so I did not think that this is where I was going to be when I was, a teenager or even in college. So growing up, I was super good at math, and as all well-meaning parents and counselors do, and teachers, as they tell you like, hey, you should go into the thing you're really, really good at. And so I was a banker for 15 years. I was a banker for 15 years because I was really good at math. And so about 10 years ago, I attended a workshop and I was over several executives. I was an executive in the bank and I was over several managers and I would do leadership development training with them and sales training with my managers. And so I would be sent to different workshops kind of all over the place. And one of them was based off the book, The Happiness Advantage. And I remember walking into the room as an executive, and I had my boss there right next to me. And the person at the front of the room said, if you change the way you see things, then the things you see will change. And I laughed out loud. And I nudged my boss and I said, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Can I leave? And she's like, if you want to get fired. So I was like, all right, I'll stay. And the next, it was a 3-hour workshop and it changed my life. I mean, it changed my life that it was just research after research and study after study of people when they change from negative or neutral to positive, how their results dramatically changed in front of them. And I changed everything. At that moment, 10 years ago, I changed everything. I changed my degrees. I was getting accounting and finance degrees, changed those to communications and positive psychology degrees. Changed my job. Obviously, I'm an entrepreneur now, been for the last 5 years. And now, because I've changed the way I see things, my whole life has changed. And so I teach that to other people as well. So yeah, that's kind of my story there of how I got to where I am.
Wow, that is such an inspiring story. We can change where we are at every moment of our career. But I also think that your career in banking helps you a lot in what you do right now, because how working in a corporation looks like from the inside, right?
Yep. Yeah. From the top bottom, I was one of the top executive leaders in the bank. So I know corporate banking in particular very well, but corporations in general, I'm very familiar with. So
Yeah. So you're teaching people how to create success, how to achieve success in life and in business. It is very interesting that you have this holistic approach. So can you share with us how do you do this? What areas do you actually work on to achieve this?
Yeah. So first of all, the holistic approach, like when you hear somebody say, it's just business, nothing personal, it's just business. I don't agree with that. I agree that, how we show up in one area of our life is how we show up in all areas of our life. So if we hate our jobs and we go to our jobs every day and it's just the job that's gets us to the next thing, then quite frankly, that's how we show up in life. We tend to be disgruntled in our marriage or in our family or with our kids or in our home or in our neighborhoods. And so how you show up in one thing is how you show up in all things energetically. And so with your attitude, by the way, so there's a lot of people that are like, that word energy, I don't like that. It's the same thing as attitude. In my opinion, it's like attitude, energy. It's how you do things, the attitude with which you do it. So my process is pretty simple. I do a lot with neural pathway change. So 93 to 97% of our life is subconscious, meaning I don't think about it. I just do it. When you get in your car and you want to leave your house, you don't sit there and think when you get in your car, okay, I got to put my car in drive, or I got to put it in reverse. And then I got to slightly move my right foot from the gas pedal to the brake pedal, to the gas pedal, to the brake pedal. And when that light turns this, you don't think any of that. It's all now subconscious. In fact, most people get from point A to point B and they have no clue how they got to point B. They're like, how did I get here? It's because our subconscious, below consciousness, took over. It took over and it took us wherever it is that we're going to go. And 93 to 97% of our life is subconscious, meaning 93 to 97% of our results are subconscious. We just do it. We just do it day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. And if people don't disrupt that subconscious, they'll continue to repeat the same results they've always repeated. And so the process I put people through is a process of changing the subconscious to match where it is that we want to go. Now, most people have limits. So if I were to ask you, hey, what are your dreams? What are your desires? What are your aspirations? Like, most people have like this box that they put themselves in that says, well, I can only, or I don't know how, therefore I can't do that. And so the first part we have to do is break through and figure out, like, what do you really want? What do you want after your career? What do you want for your job? What do you want for your next step? What do you want for the next 5 steps? And can you get there in 1 step? So here's the fallacy thinking that is in corporate America today. And that is that if I'm in job A and I want to get to job F, I've got to go through B, C, D, and E to get to F. If I want to get from this position to this position, I got to have all this experience to get there. And we allow these limits of what has to come next to control us. And so for me, it starts with what do you want? What's your vision? And then how can we get there the quickest, the fastest? And what blocks do you have of like, well, Tony, like, I don't have that experience, so they're not going to choose me, or they're not going to pick me, or I don't have that qualification that they were asking for. So can I give you an experience of my banking and how this kind of all worked out in banking?
Yeah.
So I was a manager for, like I say, probably 10 years in banking. 10 of my 15 years, I managed people. And I got to the point where I was overseeing all the managers and managers. And so the qualifications of a branch manager at the bank I was at was you had to have a 4-year degree and you had to have X years of experience in banking. That was like what was said as prerequisites on an application if somebody applied for the job. And my recruiter would call me right before our interviews and say, okay, Tony, you're going to interview 15 people today. Do you want me to weed out those that don't have the 4-year degree or the 5+ years of experience? And my answer to the recruiter was always, no, do not weed them out. I want to interview them. And here's what I found. My best employees, my best managers were the ones that didn't have the degree or didn't have the experience. They were my best managers. They were the ones, and I've now figured out why. It's because they had the belief to say, you know what? I don't have the qualifications that you guys are asking for, but the least I can do is apply. What's the worst thing that could happen? They just throw my application out and say no? Like, that's the worst thing that can happen. So why not give it a shot? Why not try? And most people won't even try. They will see that, like, oh, they want 4 years, they want a 4-year degree, and I only have 2-year degree. Do you know how often managers actually look at that stuff? Maybe they do. If they're like really niche, they will. But for me in banking, it's like, dude, I can teach you banking. I can teach you banking. I can teach you, how to work with people and customer service, but I can't teach tenacity. I can't teach this level of belief that would, now I know I can teach it because that's what I do. But at that time, it was like, I can't teach these intangibles. So let me go and try and find a different way to find them. And so it goes from these, like what I call quantum leaps. It's people that say, I am at A and I want to go to F. And I'm going to just go all out. I'm just going to apply for the job. See what happens. The worst thing that can happen is they say no, but most people won't even try. And so those are the things that I work on with people. Like, let's work on your beliefs of why won't you even try? Why won't you even put in an application? Let's at least try and see where it leads, see where it takes us.
Yeah, it is so interesting that we all have those limitations in our minds. And for every person, those limitations are different. Even in terms of how much we can earn monthly, for example, what is our dream number, or which position we want to be at, or what kind of business do we want to own. We have those limitations and we think that we cannot go beyond. So what if we change those limitations and we actually go one step further and we say, okay, so I don't want to go from A to B, but I want to go from A to F. So what can we actually do? And what do you do when you work with people? What are the steps to actually get there when the mindset is already changed?
Yeah. So I'll start with a person's definition of success and failure, because that's where it all begins. And if I asked you, like, what is your definition of success? What would you tell me? Because it may be like most people, that if I were to go on the street and ask 100 people, like, tell me, what is success? What would like, let's have a quick dialogue here. What would be your answer to the question, what is success? How do you define it?
Yeah, I think that success is the perfect balance in all areas of life: private life, work life, financial life, emotional, and spiritual, and all other areas of our lives. And I think that this is when all those areas are in a perfect balance, then we achieve success. This would be my interpretation.
I like it. I haven't heard that one before, so that was really, really good. So Elena, would you agree that if we were to go, you and me, out on the street and we were to just interview 100 people, that we would probably get some variation or form of success as achieving a desired outcome? Would you agree that that's probably the most likely response we're going to get? That I succeeded when I had this thought in my head of what success would look like, and I got it. So does that make sense?
Yes. I think that this is what most people would say. However, I think that if you ask me, I think that having goal in mind and achieving it doesn't necessarily mean having success overall, because for me, it happened several times that, for example, I set a goal to run a marathon, and then I ran a marathon, and then, okay, so what? I ran a marathon. I can put it on my CV, but it doesn't mean that I am successful or I am something. So it did not change anything in my life in general. So I think that that's why this definition of success can be a little bit tricky here.
Yeah. So again, but if you go to most people's standards, if you were to say, and we'll just take your example of running a marathon, most people would determine their level of success of, I put this vision out there, I wanted to run a marathon, I ran the marathon, therefore I was successful because I ran it. I ran the 26.2 miles and I was successful because I did it. And therefore, the definition of failure for most people, now you're different. You're really, like, you're at a different level of like thought pattern of what success is. But for most people, they look at failure as, I didn't achieve my desired outcome. Yeah. So if they didn't run the 26.2 mile marathon, then if they didn't get to the finish line, then their thought pattern is, I failed. I didn't finish. I failed. Does that make sense?
Yes. I think that for most people it would be like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so here's, and by the way, those two definitions will cripple people. It will cripple people's success. If you're looking at life through a lens of success being that I achieved my desired outcomes, and failure as I didn't achieve my desired outcomes, therefore I failed, then your success will be massively crippled. So here's two new definitions of success and failure. So my definition of success follows the great Earl Nightingale. He was in the 1950s. He was like the first podcaster, by the way. He would do audio notes or audio shows where it would just be his voice on the the radio, and it was motivational and it was amazing. And so he created an audio called The Strangest Secret, 1950 something, and it's so good. You can go find it on YouTube. But he shares that the definition of success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. And I just changed one word of that. It's the progression towards a dream. That's my definition of success. It's the progression towards a vision that I have in my head, and I'm progressing towards it. Now, could trying something and it not working be progression? Yes. So you look at like Thomas Edison, he tried 10,000 different ways to get the light bulb, and he succeeded. He got what he wanted on several different occasions, but it wasn't what his vision was. It wasn't what he thought. And so he kept trying and trying and trying until he got our light bulb. And now we have light bulbs all over the place. And so, so his definition of success was it's the progression towards that vision. I progressed. Even if I fall flat on my face, I progressed. I got closer. I learned what not to do, but I progressed. And then my favorite definition of failure comes from a lady named Sarah Blakely. Do you know who Sarah Blakely is, Elena?
No.
So she is the founder of Spanx. Now,
oh yeah. So because I know the name, and now I understand who is it.
So most men listeners that are probably listening to this podcast are like, what are Spanx? It's women's underwear. Okay. So for men, you probably don't know what that is, but most women will know. Oh yeah, I know Spanx. I wear Spanx all the time. So Sarah Blakely, she was doing an interview. So she went from, $2,500 in her savings account to a billionaire. And with her ideas that she did. And somebody asked her on CNN, as she was over $1 billion, it was a few years ago, she was doing an interview, and somebody asked her, like, how did you do this? How did you get so successful? And she reflected back on her childhood. And she shared an experience that she had with her siblings and her dad. And she would say every week we would come around the dinner table, and my dad would ask us what our failure of the week was. What we went out and tried and totally fell on our face. And we would celebrate it. We would celebrate all of our failures together. And if we didn't bring a failure of the week, then Dad was genuinely disappointed that we didn't bring a failure of the week to the dinner table. And then she said this. She said, I didn't realize it at the time, but my dad was redefining my definition of failure from outcome to simply not trying. So here is my two definitions. And if you can get these, you will be massively successful in life. You succeed as long as you're progressing towards your dream. You've got a dream out there. You've got the F. I want to go from A to F. So that's my vision. That's my dream. As long as you're progressing. Now, failing, meaning I didn't get my outcome right now, is progression. And the only time you fail is when you quit, when you don't try. That's it. That is failure. Failure is simply not trying. And as long as you tried and you fell on your face and it didn't work out the way you wanted to, you did not fail. You succeeded. The only time you fail is when you fall on your face and you say, I'm never doing that again. And you don't. That's when you fail, when you don't try again. So that would be like the main message I would share with anybody who's trying to go from A to F. And how do I change it? It's like, I got to redesign my definition of success and failure. And then there's a bunch of other things we do to change the subconscious. But that right there if you can get clear on what it is you want, the A to F, like what is that I want? And then you try. You submit your application, you submit your resume, you say, hey, I'm going to try this. And what worse? The worst thing they can say is no, but I'm going to try it. And maybe you'll get from A to D. And they say, hey, we don't have this position for you, but we have this other position that I think you'd be a great fit for. And you're like, awesome, I'll take that. But don't settle for the next logical step, which is B. And that's what most people do. They'll go, no, I got to get B before I can get to C. It's like, try, go after it.
Yes, I can see that you are really inspiring and motivational, definitely. So I think that just by listening to you, people want to get more, to go to try this next step. So we need to progress. And we need to constantly go towards this big dream, this big goal. And you mentioned that 93 to 97% of what we do is subconscious. So do you think that it is worth changing that and becoming more conscious in a way, or we can work somehow on the subconscious part? So what can we do to actually make our actions more conscious and more focused on our goals?
Yeah, one of the best ways to make the unconscious conscious, that's what I call it, it's the subconscious conscious, is to just be aware. To be aware. And one of the best ways I know how to be aware, so if you ever come and you go through a workshop of mine or you come into a program of mine, you will notice that I will always talk about the power of gratitude. Gratitude is an amazing power of presencing ourselves and making the unconscious conscious. It's the ability to look and to see what is in your life instead of what's not. And most people are so programmed to look at their life of everything that's wrong and everything that's missing and everything that's not right about themselves, instead of looking at life through a lens of, but look at what I have. Look at how blessed I am. Look at the vision that I have, the eyes that I have to see, the ears that I have to hear, the limbs that I have to walk with and run with. And people that don't have a leg they would die to be able to run again. And I have my leg. And even though it aches and even though it's in pain, I still have it. And it's getting into this state of like how blessed I am versus how cursed I am. And so the thing that you want to be focused on for the subconscious, and so yes, you want to learn how to focus on what are the things that you're completely missing, that you are like completely oblivious to, and just start being aware. Start being aware. By the way, the more you dive into the subconscious, the more you'll realize how conscious you are of the subconscious, meaning it is vast. And I don't know if you'll ever tap into the majority of your subconscious. It is so big and so vast that is, it literally is what makes your eyes blink and your heart beat. And you don't have to sit there and think about it. Your subconscious just does it. And there are so many functions. In fact, if you write down the number 1 and then write 18 zeros next to the number 1, that number is 1 quintillion. And that is how many connections your brain is making every single second. 1 quintillion. That's why 93 to 97% of our life is subconscious. And if we were 100% conscious of the subconscious, we would go insane. We would literally go bonkers. And so we have mechanisms in place to help us that when something becomes subconscious, it now is subconscious. It's below conscious. So the way to bring up that stuff is through an intense what do I have? Just notice the things around you. That's a beginning point for a lot of people.
Yeah, so definitely gratitude is a great exercise to become more conscious about what we have, also to appreciate maybe some of our achievements that we did, because very often we're focusing on this big goal in front of us, but we're not noticing those small milestones that we have achieved. Just thinking about those achievements during the last month or last year, it can make us really feel how much we are able to achieve in the future. I think that it is so important. Yeah. So Tony, and what else can we do? So okay, the gratitude, and let's also give our listeners one more tip maybe on how they can move closer towards their goal. What else can we do, practice to achieve that?
Yeah, the greatest thing that I can share with you is to invest in you, invest time in you, invest resources in you, invest in workshops and seminars and summits and retreats, and like invest in you, work on you. You are your greatest asset. And we invest in things, and we invest in stock markets and businesses and furniture and houses and cars. But the most important investment you can ever make is in yourself. You change the way you see things, then the things you see will dramatically change. And so the greatest lesson I've learned in my life is that every penny I put into myself comes out 100-fold. Every minute I put into myself like takes me dramatically closer to my dreams and visions and goals. And so if there's a workshop in your area that talks about the mind, go to it. If it's $20, go to it. If you're on the, YouTube and you're researching things and you're like, man, this 2-hour video on the power of the subconscious, like watch it and just be insatiable about your desire to learn about how can I use the best gift I've ever been given, which is me. How can I maximize it? What can I do to make sure that my mind is focused on the things I want instead of the things I don't want, and focus on the things that I have instead of the things I don't have. And it starts, in my opinion, with even podcasts like this. That if you find a cool podcast like Elena's here, like keep listening and be insatiable about it. Go and listen to as many podcasts on this subject as you can. And the more you learn, the more you'll be able to get closer to your dreams and visions and goals.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Tony, for all the inspiration and all the tips that you gave us today. So if our listeners want to reach out, want to contact you, where can they find you?
Yeah, great. So you can jump on my website, tonychild.com. There's all my links to follow me on social media, LinkedIn, wherever you want. I do a lot of podcasting and sharing and whatnot. So just, you can link up with me there. We also have free gifts that we give out. So we have a free high performance book. So if you just go to freehighperformancebook.com, you can get a book, and it's 10 tips that I give people of how do I change my subconscious? How do I become more of a high performer? So that's a free gift that we give our listeners of podcasts.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We will put the links under this episode so that our listeners can immediately jump there and download your free gift. Thank you so much for being on Ideas and Leaders. It was a pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Ideas and Leaders podcast. Did you enjoy this episode? Let me know that you listened by tagging me in your LinkedIn profile and using a hashtag Ideas and Leaders. See you in the next episode.